Well, welcome back to a very sunny Paul Ricard circuit in France. We're getting set for our second Hagerty Radical Cup UK race here in France. So only a away day round after we've had all the races so far in the UK. Scott Woodward's here once again to guide you through all the action. Now, this is a positive sight we're seeing here, particularly if you're watching the first race earlier on. Sam Shaw, who came into the weekend as the SR1 class leader, his car appears to be having the finishing touches before it is set to head out for the second 30-minute plus one lap race this morning in Paul Ricard on the full Grand Prix circuit. It's near Marseille. Been around since 1970 when it was first constructed. It's been the home of the French Grand Prix on and off. It's also home of the Paul Ricard 6 hours amongst the Fanatec GT World Challenge. There was also even a 6-hour race that happened last night, which began around about 5 to 7 and ended just before 1 o'clock in the morning. So the Circuit Paul Ricard staff have certainly had quite a lot of work over the past 24 hours or so, with plenty of motorsport at their disposal. As you can see, the weather conditions are just as bright and beautiful and warm as they were for our first race. In fact, the track temperature has risen, and so has the air temperature. The track temperature now 33 degrees and 23 degrees air temperature. That means that's going to be a little more interesting in terms of strategy when it comes to tyres and when it comes to car setup to cope with that extra heat on track. The ambient temperature up a couple of degrees. It's still manageable, and there is more of a breeze in the air now, about sort of 10 km/h winds and breeze around the circuit. The humidity's dropped a little bit. It's a little drier now than it was this morning, and that should certainly make conditions a little more bearable in some aspects, but maybe a little tougher in others, particularly that higher track temperature, which you can see the heat haze coming off from there. And that will be a mixture of both the progress of the morning, but also as well that would have been some of the result of the 2 qualifying sessions we've just had for the Euro Cup 3 and Spanish F4 Championships. Now there's a pleasing sight we've also got for race number 2, and that's Christian Brooks. Now he was battling with eventual race winner and runaway championship leader Chris Lulham for about 2/3 of the race in race number 1, and then unfortunately whatever mechanical issue it was that forced him out, he had no choice but to pull up just at the top of the Mistral straight in the closing stages, and that unfortunately meant that he was a non-score. He wasn't able to replicate the second place that he picked up right at the beginning of the year in the very first race of the season at Donington. So he will be looking to try and get a bit of redemption. Another driver also who does definitely need a good result after a bit of a disastrous race 1 is the man second in the championship, Luke Hilton. He barely lasted 2 laps before he had to come in with a problem. And the man who has, for the most part, been perpetually second place in the season series with a lot of second place finishes and a race victory, let's not forget, because he did pick up a win in what was scheduled to be the 3rd race at Donington, but then became the first race of the weekend run at Stetson. It was the replacement race after some timetable constraints forced race 3 to be postponed to a different round. But apart from that victory, he has had, alongside the DNF this morning, he's had no less than 6 second-place finishes, plus a 5th place and a 6th. So certainly running well. He was coming into the day's action, some 60 points behind Chris Lulham, and was up there in the mix. He was up there putting on a great battle with himself and Lulham and Christian Brooks, who had made a very fast start. Also in there too was Chris Preen. We have to give a shout out to him. He actually beat Chris Lulham to turn 1 off the start, which is not a thing that happens very often. When we see Chris Lulham making a start, he usually gets the better of everyone else and just charges his way into the lead, and then you never see him again because he's usually dominated most of the season. As I mentioned, he's won now 9 of the 10 races run so far. The only victory that he didn't capture was, I think, due to a spin in that first race at Stetson that was replacing Donington's 3rd race. And as referenced, that went to Luke Hilton. That certainly helped him maintain a strong position in the points. Should mention with the points this weekend here at Paul Ricard and also at the season finale at Brands Hatch in a few months' time, both of those weekends are double points, which means if you take a victory, it's not the standard 40 points that you score, then 35 for second, 30 for third. It's now 80 points. And of course, it being doubled, it means that the second place is a difference of 10 points. So 70 for second place And then third place earns you 60 points, then 54, 48, 44, 40, 36, 32, and 28 points down to 10th. Then 24, 20, 18, 16, 14, 12, 10, 8, 6, and 4. Now I can hear in my ear that I think the Radicals, yes, are now heading onto track. They'll have another rolling start, and we'll go through the grid. Grid set by the second fastest times in yesterday's qualifying session. That means a little bit of redemption for one or two drivers who hit strife, this morning, earlier on, and we'll get a chance to really get a good result in order to get a better haul of points from this second race. So out of pit lane they come. They will get, essentially, this is their formation lap straight out of the pit lane. They will follow the safety car around, and then in the last few corners we'll start to form up in 2x2 formation for 30 minutes plus 1 lap. It's already their second race of the day. Their first one was bang on 9 o'clock this morning local time. They've only had about an hour and 10 minutes to turn these cars around for race number 2, so quite a bit of racing in such a short space of time. Already an hour's worth of racing within the space of about an hour to 2.5 hours, which is interesting to see. I wonder if there are 1 or 2 more cars which might hit strife. Hopefully not, but we shall see how this one lines up. So here's the starting grid. As you can see on the left-hand side, it is championship leader Chris Lulham, who would have further extended his gap by taking 80 points plus the bonus for starting the race, qualifying on pole, and also taking the fastest lap of the race. Alongside him on the front row of the grid is his main championship rival and teammate, Luke Hilton for Valor Racing. He needs a good result after his DNF in race 1 earlier on this morning. A good qualifying for Jack Yang puts him on the second row of the grid. He makes it a Valor Racing 1-2-3. The Chinese driver lining up on the second row alongside Adrien Girard, who is part of Radical France, part of the Radical France Cup. Good to have him on the grid this weekend. Then it's row 3 for Chris Preen, who was the winner in the Fangio class. That's for drivers aged 45 and over. He starts on the third row of the grid after taking second overall. He's alongside Alim Geshev, one of the 2 drivers that we regularly see coming across from the, who've regularly been seen in the Gulf Radical Cup, coming across this weekend to try their hand at European Radicals. Row 4 is obviously John McLeod and Peter Tyler, who were fellow podium mates on the Fangio class podium in the top 3 with Chris Preen. They start together on the 4th row of the grid. Jason Rishover, who recovered well from a spin at the beginning of race 1, exiting the Camp Corner, was able to pick his way back up to 9th place. And he starts ahead of Oscar Joyce, who is going to be one to watch, I think, from deep in the pack. He starts way down in 10th position. Not a great qualifying for Oscar, but he was one of a couple of drivers that really picked their way through the field and was challenging for what became second place after Christian Brooks retired from P2. And that was initially a fight for third between himself and Chris Preen. Chris Preen just there in white and green going through the shot ahead of the black car of Alim Geshev. And then behind Oscar Joyce, we have Amir Feyzulin. Now, I was a bit mystified as to why he was disqualified from race 1 earlier on. I did find out at the bottom of the timing sheet he was given a drive-through penalty at some point throughout race number 1, and he was disqualified for not respecting it, which certainly suggests to me he was given a drive-through penalty but didn't come in to serve it. So therefore, he has to start. Well, he was disqualified, and he'll get another chance to get a good result from the 6th row of the grid alongside Rob Greenwood, who had a spin late on in the race. Then another car to watch out for, Christian Brooks. I don't expect him to stay back in 13th place on the grid. He will certainly be carving his way through if he can. Also, watch out for Adrian Hallmark, who's in the Bentley Speed 8 liveried car in 14th position. Then the 2 SR1 class cars. We should have both Marcus Littlewood and hopefully Sam Shaw on the grid. I think I can see him. There he is. At the back of the grid, we've got 2 of the development cars from 2 of the more factory drivers. Ryan Lindsay in car 33 and James Pinkerton, who is in the Radical SR10 XX3. They are not scoring for points. They're a bit invisible for results, but will still be on track nonetheless, and good to see them continuing their development. So, is it going to be deja vu again? Will it be another Chris Lulham domination? Or, as we saw in race 1, can Luke Hilton and co give him a good run for his money and possibly stop his dominance? Out of the Virage DuPont, onto the pit straight now, looking ahead at the gantry of the red lights. Lulham and Hilton on the front row of the grid. Race 2 of the day of the Hagerty Radical Cup UK. Circuit Paul Ricard is underway. It's a good start for the back of the grid from the Littlewood and Shaw, the 2 SR1 machines, but down towards the Ferrari S for the first time, and it's 3 abreast now for the lead. Lulham has the inside line. Look at Chris Chris Preed up the inside looking for the lead into second place. He's side by side with Hilton. Adrian Girard tries to go with him through the first couple of corners. Looks as though they've all got through unscathed. One or two cars running wide. I think it's Oscar Joyce running wide in the background, going wheel to wheel with Jason Rishover. And down towards the complex at the Virage de Hotel. That I think was Alim Geshev going for a move on 5th position. That's in battling with Adrian Girard. One car skipping the S-bend at L'Hotel. Chris Lulham in the lead now. Luke Hilton in 2nd place. Chris Preen in 3rd. But it's Girard and Geshev, and 2 cars running wide, one of which is Sam Shaw in the SR1 class. Oscar Joyce also running very wide too. I think the other car might have been Rob Greenwood. Down to the Mistral straight for the first time. Lulham, Hilton, Preen, Girard. He's under threat from Alim Geshev for 4th position. Jason McLeod in 6th. Then Yang, Brooks and Rishover. There's the complex, and that was Girard running wide and running deep into chicane over the curb. Big twitch from Geshev as well as he holds on to the place for 4th. So they are all elbows and action stations on the opening lap. You can see there also, that looks like it's John McLeod actually on the back of Adrian Girard. Already putting him under pressure for 5th position. Up the inside, he looks into Senior, that flat out right-hander. And then the double apex of Debose. Oh, that was in the background there, just the right-hand side. That was, I think, McLeod and Girard getting very close for comfort. And also that in there too was Christian Brooks. I said to watch out for him. He started back in 13th position, but I told you that he wouldn't stay there because of the pace that he's already shown. And already he's picked up 6 positions in the opening lap thus far. So I think he could be at least on for challenging for a podium finish. So out of the end of lap number 1. Out of Virage du Pont, onto the pit straight again to complete the first lap of race 2. And Chris Lulham, as you'd expect, out in front. A couple of cars more running wide on the exit there from the hairpin. We'll catch to see who that might have been. It might have been Rob Greenwood or possibly Christian Brooks, one of the two. So Lulham leads, Hilton 2nd. It's Preen in 3rd. Geshev up to 4th after that move at the chicane on Adrian Girard. And he himself now is under threat from Christian Brooks. And it's then Rishover in 7th position, McLeod in 8th. 9th is Rob Greenwood, and 10th is the top SR1 runner, which is Marcus Littlewood. In the pit lane is Jack Yang, which is a shame because he scored quite a strong result in race number 1. He picked up a 5th position, one of his best results of the year. But sadly, he will not be achieving that in race 2. Issues for the 21 car. I did mention it's quite a short turnaround in these 2 races, only about an hour and 10 minutes or so. While some teams have managed to get themselves sorted with any problems they had, others might be feeling it with so much racing in such a short amount of time. But that's simply just the timetable. That's the nature of it. And drivers and teams doing the best they can to cope with not just the timetable, but also the quite warm conditions out there. The track temperature continues to rise. Currently 34 degrees now, so it's going up as we go throughout the morning. There's a spinner in the background. Is that possibly Rob Greenwood in the background? It is. He's the one tumbling down the timing screen. So Rob Greenwood down to 13th position. As we see here, Chris Preen chasing after Luke Hilton. And thankfully, it looks as though Luke Hilton's car, touchwood, is in a much better shape than it was mechanically at the end of the 2nd lap in race 1. He is definitely looking a bit more in shape here. He has got Chris Preen trying to keep him company. Geshev and Girard are not too far away from each other. In fact, Geshev, there's been a change of that, I think, there, or almost there has, because Girard now is some 2.6 seconds off Geshev. There he is. And I saw there that Christian Brooks was on his tail. And there he is. That's the fight for 5th going on, just going out of the shot. Behind them, that is John McLeod and Jason Rishover, and there has been a change, I think, between the 2 of them. So McLeod had a Rishover, yes, out through the final couple of corners. McLeod has made the move. And for those who follow the Hagerty Radical Cup UK, I'm going to get my syllables mixed up, inevitably, we'll notice that Jason Rishover is not in the same usual livery that he's in. He's usually in white, blue and yellow. But instead, or it's more grey, blue and yellow, one of the 2. But instead, this weekend, he's actually racing in the new 5th gen SR3 XXR from the Radical factory. So it's in the factory red and yellow colours, to compare it against his own third generation SR3 RSX. So there he is, just following the white and green machine of John McLeod. There goes Chris Lulham at the bottom of the shot. Runaway championship leader, and running away with the race so far in the early stages, race number 2. Here comes Christian Brooks, lining up for a move for 5th position. Adrian Girard, just as Geshev did, might just allow him to get through, and again Girard runs out wide, has no choice, and Christian Brooks is up to 5th position. So from 13th on the grid, he's made up 8 spots already. His next target is to chase after Alim Geshev. Car 77, and here's the move. Nice and simple, up the inside, claim the apex for the first part, and park the car neatly on the racing line for the second part. That was a nice textbook radical move into the chicane. Christian Brooks now can go eyes forward, start chasing after Geshev for 4th position. Geshev, who is part of the 360 competition team, along with Amir Feyzulin. He was 3rd in the 2023-24 Golf Radical Cup. That was his first full season with Radical. So certainly showing everything he's learned so far from that first season, and running well in 4th place. Out in front, Chris Lulham is already 3.3 seconds to the good, make it 3.4. It is another new fastest lap of the race for him. There goes Chris, 2-minute 10.583. And once again, lighting up the sectors purple. It's not an uncommon sight, I can tell you that. Here's someone who has absolutely taken to Radical Cup racing like the proverbial duck to water, and just carries on impressing. And I think this is said in previous commentary on live broadcasts for Radical Cup UK this year, you just run out of superlatives. Yes, it's early in the second race. Yes, he's got a gap of 3.5 seconds. Yes, there's still all this race and one more to go, but just the results speak for themselves, and Chris Lulham is just in a zone that hardly anyone else seems to match. Having said that, yes, Christian Brooks was showing quite good pace. If I look at his pace, in fact, his last lap was a 2-minute 11.861. That was a personal best, but it's still 1.3 seconds off this man, who's just lowered the fastest time of the race in the early stages. Luke Hilton, meanwhile, in 2nd place, again enjoying his first season of senior racing. Was impressive in his first couple of senior races in Radicals, in the World Finals at Portimao last year. A runner-up, and is currently 2nd in the championship. And started his circuit racing education in the Fiesta Junior Championship, where he was pretty quick and showed plenty of promise. So he's made transitions from a front-wheel drive Ford Fiesta to a rear-wheel drive Radical Sports prototype, and certainly taken to it pretty quickly. I see the Christian Brooks, I noticed, is chipping away very quickly at Alim Geshev's advantage in 4th position. His last lap was half a second better than Geshev, and on this lap alone, he has taken another 7/10 out of him to be right on his tail, exiting Virage du Pont onto the pit straight. There they go. So in just 9 minutes, he has been able to pick his way up the order into 4th position, into 5th, and challenging for 4th place. So I think he's definitely has the potential to pick up a podium, but he'll need to keep on pushing his way through the order in order to do so. Good to see Sam Shaw, I think he's just gone through the shot there, chasing after the tail enders in the SR3s, I should say. Good to see he's had a much more trouble-free start to the race. Speaking of trouble, I think Alim Geshev's in trouble of losing his 4th place here, because Christian Brooks showing his pace as they come out onto the back straight. There go the top 3. But there's the fight coming onto the Mistral that you need to watch for. The all-black cage for Radical, excuse me, of 77 Alim Geshev, the 82 white and red of Christian Brooks. Now Brooks has lined up a move here down into the chicane before. Now both of these men have something in common, because they've both lined up the same pass on Adrian Girard into the chicane. in relatively short succession, which means that these two are certainly going to be trying to outdo each other, but Brooks just, you feel, has that better pace given how close he was to Lulham in race 1 earlier on this morning. And another driver that's risen up the order, maybe not as quickly as we'd expected, but still there in 9th place, not featuring the same pace as he had in race 1, is Oscar Joyce. He's back in 9th and battling with, he's just got past Amir Feyzulin. His next target is to try and catch up to Jason Rishover, who himself is still chasing John McLeod for 7th position. Out of Virage de Bondor through the long right-hander of Courbe de Galaban. Virage de Tour, and up the inside with a huge dive into Virage du Pont goes Christian Brooks, and in fact actually settles it nicely on the exit of the corner over the curb, and 3 goes. That's a common move. If you can find yourself good momentum and stay close enough, you can pull off a neat little pass into the final corner, no matter how tight it is. And even though it is a very tight right-hander, good traction off the corner can certainly help you out. Here's the move. Just caught him unawares. A little lock up from Geshev. And again, just had superior traction and grip all the way through the corner. So Christian Brooks, again, showing his pace. Now, next target is 3.5 seconds up the road, just flashed to the bottom of shot, and it's Chris Preen, who is the man that ultimately benefited from Christian Brooks' retirement in race 1. So he's now possibly on course for a podium finish, but he's got 3.5 seconds to find. Chris Lulham, meanwhile, is now 4.7 seconds to the good, who in turn, with Luke Hilton in 2nd place, Luke himself is 4 seconds ahead of Preen. And in the first sector alone, some 0.6 of a second has Christian Brooks taken the lead, taken from the gap between himself and Preen. Just at the top of the shot there, the white car coming through, that was Christian Brooks. Battle Racing Squad are watching on. And they are keeping a close eye on that man right there, Chris Lulham, their charge, who continues to dominate and spread eagle the field. Of course, Chris Parter is not just a handy racer in the real world, but he's also quite a quick racer in the sim world, being part of Team Redline, which features as its main team member just a certain 3-time Formula 1 world champion in Max Verstappen. So no doubt he'll be able to learn a few tricks of the trade from Max himself, having worked closely alongside him in the sim racing ranks. And everything he's learning, both on track and on the virtual track and off it, he's applying it with aplomb. The rest of the field goes sweeping through. There goes Geshev, Girard, and McLeod and Rishover still battling over 7th and 8th. Get some of their gaps at the moment. Gap at the moment is between them. It's 5.4 seconds between Lulham and Hilton. 4.5 now between Hilton and Preen, but 2.2 seconds between Preen and Brooks. In those sectors alone, I think Brooks took a full, 1.5 seconds out of him in that lap alone. So the gap is coming down rapidly. It's now under 2 seconds. You can see there, 10.8 seconds and then 12.5. That's the overall gaps to the leader. So you can see there, the gap is only 1.3 seconds now. So it continues to come down, but there it is. Luke Hilton goes out of shot at the bottom. But the 2 cars towards the camera here, white and green, that's Chris Preen. The white, black and red car chasing him down is Christian Brooks. Here's another fight that's worth watching. McLeod and Rishover. McLeod in white and green. Rishover in the factory colours, running for the first time the 5th gen SR3 XXR. And he's on McLeod's tail here. Puts his foot down, will be into the toe up towards senior. So a couple of battles developing here. First one for 3rd place. The next one down the order is for 7th. And there it is, through the shot. And one thing we should mention, as there is the 33 car of Ryan Lindsay. Remember, that car's a development car, so that car is simply used this weekend in the nicest possible way I can put this, as a well-publicised test session. It's out there simply just to gain some laps and gain some data in a race environment rather than just pounding around a test at the Paul Ricard on its own. It's getting some data and running in dirty air and running in packs, running with cars around it. That's quite valuable data to make these cars as raceable and as user-friendly as possible for anyone from complete novices taking their first steps in car racing to experienced veterans with drivers some 5 to 8 to 10, even 14 plus years of experience in the case of John McLeod. And that's what makes the Radical cars so popular, the fact they are quite user-friendly and anyone can pick them up. It's quite user-friendly for Christian Brooks, particularly as he's now on the back of Chris Preen. This is the fight for the final podium spot. And Christian Brooks, again, looking at his last lap, was a full 2 seconds quicker. Undeniably, it is a case of when, rather than if, he gets past Chris Preen. How difficult will Chris make it? He didn't really give Oscar Joyce an easy ride and defended him all the way to the end, but I can't really see, all due respect to Chris, him holding off Christian Brooks for the next 13 3/4 minutes plus a lap, because that number 82 car is just looking a little bit too quick. And now, middle of the road, down the Mistral straight. Which way does Christian Brooks go? Because he's going to come for a move, and he will come. But no, Chris Preen's got a little more straight line speed. So I wonder if it'll come in the twisty sections, and maybe that's kind of what kept Chris Preen in front, because he had better pace at some points to keep Oscar Joyce at bay in what became the fight for second. Up towards Senior. This incredibly fast, flat-out right-hander before the double apex right of Debose. Geshev having a strong race in fifth, being followed by Adrian Girard, and still we see McLeod and Joyce battling. And as Chris Preen takes a slightly wider run through the second part of the right-hander, I thought for a moment that Chris Brooks was going to make a dive up the inside. He sits back and holds on. Running wide there, Christian Brooks, showing how much pace he's got. Getting not maybe frustrated, but can he make a move darting up the inside as he did to Geshev a couple of laps ago? He's close enough to think about it, but no, chooses to look for the undercut on the exit. He's got really good traction off the corner, does Christian. That's been a strength of his all day so far. Again in the slipstream, but I think maybe Chris Preen's got that slightly better car in a straight line, and that's just allowing him to hold that advantage. There, you can see just Oscar Joyce was going through there back in 9th position. Quick look at where he has pace-wise compared to McLeod. Yeah, he's 1.5 seconds quicker, so he should catch John McLeod relatively shortly. Chris Preen, meanwhile, has firmly been caught by Christian Brooks. You just feel there is a sense of inevitability, but given how well Chris Preen defended Oscar Joyce, maybe it's not so simple. In through Camp Corner, we've got a race in our hands here. Good run through St. Bowman, now onto the back straight. Chris Lulham, you can hear, has just gone through the shot. He's definitely there, 8.6 seconds ahead of this man. Luke Hilton at the top of the shot, bottom of the shot. Now the fight for third. Preen, Brooks, as close as he's ever been. Tucked under the rear wing of that number 3 car. There goes Hilton, but we need to see the fight for third. But no, that's 32, in fact. That is Luke Hilton. We cut away from that fight for third, and there it is in the background. So still Chris Preen holds on. Christian Brooks continues to apply the pressure, just hounding him down the second part of the Mistral straight. Back through Senior. And if they're not careful, behind them, Alim Geshev might start to close back in here. Is now at the inside goes Christian Brooks. This is the move into the second part of Debose. Chris Preen takes the wide line, and Christian Brooks saw the opportunity and slips through into third position. Now then, with 10.5 minutes plus 1 lap, the next question is, can he catch Luke Hilton in second place? Tall order. He's got to make up 7 seconds in front of him. And the last laps, he was admittedly running to Chris Preen's pace. If I look at best laps, he has a best lap time. His best lap time is 0.6 better. There's a chance he could do it. Here's the replay. And again, Brooks ever opportunistic, up the inside. He saw the gap that Preen was going to leave. He took the typical racing line, did Preen. And Brooks said, if you're going to make it that easy, I'm slipping by every single time. Thank you very much. So there is Chris Preen. And I wonder, could he possibly be under threat from Alim Geshev in 5th position now? Chris Lulham continues on. Quick shout out to the SR1 class, as we see Adrian Hallmark in the Bentley tribute livery on that car. You can see the British Racing green, silver and black. In the SR1s, it's still Marcus Littlewood who leads the way. Sam Shaw looks like he will be on course to take a finish this time. He's 9.6 seconds off Marcus Littlewood. That'll be, again, more valuable points to take away out of Sam Shaw's lead. In fact, I think because of his non-finish, the gap between them coming into the weekend was 52 points. It's 80 points for a win because it's double points for both Paul Ricard and the Brands Hatch season finale. So I'm almost certain Marcus Littlewood would have taken the championship lead just in that one race result alone. Here goes Hilton. Here goes Brooks, Preen, Geshev. There's Adrian Girard. And there has been a change behind them for 7th place. Jason Rishover has got through on John McLeod. So the move completed there for Jason. The rest of the top 10 is Oscar Joyce, who is about only 4 tenths away from John McLeod. That might be the next battle to watch out for, I think. The scrap for 8th and 9th position. Amir Fayzulin, who's recovering after his disqualification from race 1 due to not serving a drive-through penalty. Next in the order, Peter Tyler, 11th place. Rob Greenwood's recovering after his early spin. There you see there, that is Ryan Lindsay coming out. No, that's the SR10 of James Pinkerton. Again, another car that's a nice car to bring out a Radical to keep its development firmly on track. No pun intended. But again, doing so in a race environment and doing so not in a way that's getting in the way of anyone else, doing their own running plan, even though it is in the middle of a half-an-hour race. There's time to come in and out and simply just learn the car, develop it, and do it in a race environment, because there's only so much you can learn from simply just doing lap after lap after lap in a test session on your own. If you can be out there with cars around you, you can learn a lot more in terms of valuable data, in terms of what these cars are like in the slipstream, what they're like when they are running in dirty air, running amongst cars around them, being lapped or lapping somebody else. It's valuable data that really helps Radical make these cars even better to race, even more user-friendly for anyone to pick them up and play, so to speak. And it really is a magnificent thing that they do to bring these two cars out. And again, they're runners' invitation. They're not here to spoil the party. They're not here to get in the way. In fact, you can see that James Pinkerton in the SR10 just effortlessly sweeping by Chris Lulham. He knows the score. He knows that car's in no way, shape or form a threat to him. It's a different pace, different car, different spec, being an SR10, different model. So he's happy to let it through and just let it get on with its own program. As I mentioned, being past the races, these two cars, they don't even feature on the timing screen because they are just invitation cars that are not here to race. So for them, as I mentioned, the term I like to use is it's simply just a very well-publicised test session for those two cars, with two very decent drivers that can help them make these cars even better going forwards for customers in Radical Cup, both in the UK and all around the world. So Adrian Hallmark in car number 8 in that Bentley Special, I'll call it. And we look further down the order. There's quite a big gap here, and all the cars disappearing out of the view of our cameras when we switch to them. Chris Lulham, meanwhile, has gone across the line to complete another lap. He's now 11.2 seconds for good out in front. Now, as for Christian Brooks, we did say how quickly can he catch Luke Hilton. Well, the gap was a couple of laps ago, 7 seconds. It's now down to 5.8. Because his last lap, he was slower in the first sector by about a tenth. He was then better by a quarter of a second. He actually gained about 6/10 of a second in that sectors 2 and 3 alone. So Christian Brooks is pushing on here. He wants a second place finish. It'll certainly be redemption for him missing out on a podium finish in race 1 after his mechanical problems. Now we see a developing fight for 7th, 8th and 9th. It's probably more for 8th and 9th, seeing as Jason Rishover got past John McLeod, and he's now trying to pull away. And yeah, look at sectors. He was better in sectors 1 and 2, and he's pulled away by another 10th or so in this sector anyway. So that means that this is going to be between McLeod and Joyce for 8th and 9th. DW Racing Squad watches on. They're watching the progress of their man, Oscar Joyce, trying to pick up another place. Hasn't been quite the race that Oscar hoped for, I don't think. I mean, a blinding start to race 1. It was really up there, hounding Chris Preen for that 2nd place finish. The podium, nonetheless, is very good. Oscar, of course, still quite young. Racing SR1s last year, briefly, but now a full campaign in SR3s this year, and also quite a prominent karter as well. A lot of karting experience the last few years before switching up to cars. Chris Lulham. He sports a little bit of British F4 experience as well. So he's used to single-seaters, but now, of course, has moved onwards into the Radical Cup. And as I mentioned in race 1, I think what we are looking at here with Chris Lulham, if he chooses to go that route, is certainly a British sports prototype racing star of the future, given how much pace he's got. Pretty impressive. So to potentially Luke Hilton, if he chooses to go the sports prototype and possibly LMP and hypercar route for sports cars. These cars give a really nice training ground both for the vast mechanical grip on offer, but also the aero grip which these Radical machines do also provide as well. Lulham turns his way out through Camp Corner, through Saint Bone, onto the first pass, the Mistral Straight. Now this is Preen versus Geshev, so Preen has fallen back into the clutches of the UAE driver. And it's not the only battle we're looking for. Gap has come down further in the fight for 2nd place. It's now down to 4.9 seconds, but I fear that Christian Brooks is running out of time. I think he spent too much time trying to pick his way through the cars previously. Maybe spent a little too much time behind Chris Preen. And starting further back after his less than satisfactory qualifying may well have hampered him getting the result he was potentially after. So Lulham goes through unchallenged again. Just saw 2nd and 3rd there. There's a fight to watch for. That was McLeod and Joyce for 8th and 9th, and we saw the DW squad watching on from the pit wall to see if their man Oscar can pick his way up another spot and take 8th at the most experienced man, at the expense of the most experienced man on the grid in terms of radical circles. And whilst we continue to watch our leader, again, shout out to the SR1s, Marcus Littlewood on course for his 2nd win. Again, promising young driver. He was last year's Motorsport UK Academy Driver of the Year. 2nd, he came into the weekend 2nd in the championship. And he also runs as a privateer. He's trying to show the way of how easy it is to run an SR1 independently. You don't have to have a massive budget or a massive team to run one successfully. He's certainly proving that here so far this weekend at Paul Ricard. As for Sam Shaw, he was in the top 5 in last year's European Karting Championships and came into the weekend leading the SR1 class. But after his retirement yesterday, I suspect that it will be Littlewood who's taken over. But how great is that? You've got the likes of young karters, Motorsport Academy drivers that have come through from junior circuit racing ranks and what have you. Younger and younger drivers coming through to give Radicals a try and seeing it as a viable option, because now these days, of course, sports car racing is very much in a boom period, both with GTs, the GT3 class in particular, and GT4 as well, growing in stature and strength. But of course, the prototype ranks these days, particularly with the hypercar class and the LMDH, and it gives opportunities to race at Le Mans and the World Endurance Championship and European Le Mans Series, still in LMP2 and LMP3. And of course, IMSA with the hypercar classes running in GTP. So there's options, there's routes to go in terms of prototype racing. And Radical certainly providing one of, if not the best. And that's why I mentioned that Chris Lulham, I think, is shaping up to be a possible sports car racing star of the future for the UK. Given the fact he is just effortlessly so quick lap after lap. Gap is now up to nearly 15 seconds out in front. time has hit 0, which means we get one more time around. Remember, it's 30 minutes plus 1 lap. So when the timer hits 0, the next time he comes across the line, you will get the signal for last lap. There's no checker flag here this time. It'll be next time by after this one. And Lulham turns his way through Virage du Pont and off the pit straight to start the final tour of this 3.6 mile kilometre, 3.6 mile Paul Ricard circuit. I'm getting my words mixed up, and it's not even the end of the morning. Even so, 15 seconds now is the gap. There it is, last lap. Luke Hilton now sees the message at the top of the board. Now, for second and third place, I can't see that changing now. The gap is 3.9 seconds, so Brooks has done well to bring it down and to lap pretty quickly and outpace Hilton in all 3 sectors pretty consistently in his last few laps, but I can't see there being a change. I can see there being a change potentially between John McLeod and Oscar Joyce, because that's a battle that's continuing to be quite close for 8th and 9th. Remember, Oscar Joyce was quite, not frustrated, but he couldn't quite find the way past Chris Preen in race 1. And there he is, just in the third car in the shot. So there, Oscar Joyce. And the car which was painted along with his race helmet, spray painted by London graffiti artists, so a very unique livery on that car. It's quite a fine looking machine, as Chris Lulham here putting a lap on Adrian Hallmark, who's trying to go with the championship leader. I mean, the cars are both exactly the same, so on the corner exit, Adrian had a bit of pace to keep with him. But Hallmark, of course, knows that he's in a different league speed-wise to Chris Lulham. As a senior through the Beausset. Still the man everyone has to try and beat and topple off the top step. And he's said it once this season, the Chris Lulham has been beaten. But even at a circuit he's outside the sim, has never really raced that before. It doesn't matter. Battle of the 8th will go on all the way to the checker flag between McLeod and Oscar Joyce. But again, the big question is, can anyone stop this man in terms of outright pace? Chris Lulham then out to the final corner. He goes into double digits for the season so far. His 10th win of the season. He wins race 2 of the day in the Hagerty Radical Cup UK at Paul Ricard. And it's going to be a victory margin even just slightly bigger than his race 1 win. Here comes Luke Hilton, 16 seconds back, but he needed that second place after retiring from race 1. Valuable points to get him back into contention on the board. Got some more ground to make up. And an impressive drive from Christian Brooks. He started all the way back in 13th on the grid. He's rewarded with a podium after his retirement. Chris Breen takes 4th. Alim Geshev rounds out the top 5. Good effort for him. Pick up a great result. Adrian Girard 6th on the run for 7th place. 8th and 9th is Rishover, then McLeod and Joyce. So McLeod does hold on to 8th place ahead of the young Irishman Oscar Joyce. Peter Tyler is set to round out the top 10 ahead of Amir Fazulin, Rod Greenwood, and then it will be another victory in the day for Marcus Littlewood in the SR1 class. Should mention also, Chris Preen was also the winner in the Fangio class, and he wins from John McLeod and Peter Tyler. So victory, at least some more trophy, another trophy to add to Chris Preen's cabinet. Across the line comes Rod Greenwood, and we wait now for our SR1 winner. There he is. And that's the development car. That's the SR3 or the SR10. That's either Ryan Lindsay or James Pinkerton. And they're still waiting for the SR1s to come across the line at the moment. There he goes. In fact, Marcus Littlewood, I can see on the timing screen, has taken the checker flag and captures his 2nd SR1 class victory. Well, again, you run out of things to say and ways to describe the pace of Chris Lulham. He continues to consistently exert his dominance over the field in Hagerty Radical Cup UK this year in 2024. There is almost simply no stopping him. That's now his 10th win in 11 races. We're only just starting the second half of the season, but it looks as though he's carrying on exactly where he left off and intending to dominate it in exactly the same fashion as he did in the first half with all but one race. And the man that beat him to that race victory after a spin put Lulham down the order in the first race of the weekend that replaced the lost Donington race is Luke Hilton. So, let's take a look at some of the highlights from race 2 of Hagerty Radical Cup. It was again a pretty straightforward start for Chris Lulham, and this time did win the whole shot down towards turn 1. Passed further back. Looked like there was some damage there, I think, for Rob Greensmith, so I didn't spot that initially. Initial moves made as Adrian Girard expense. Chris Preen tried to chase after Luke Hilton in the early stages. The big mover was Christian Brooks. Started back in 13th place, quickly up to 8th on the opening laps, then picked his way past Adrian Girard for position. Then up the inside, he was holding on to position with cars around him. DW Racing watched on as their SR1 charge carried on. The development cars also ran their programme throughout the race. And further back, Oscar Joyce was also making progress up the order. Not as high as he would have been. Would have liked to have made progress, but still all the best nonetheless. So Chris Lulham gets the handshake from Luke Hilton and some more discussion. Should also point out it's a Valor Racing 1, 2, 3, 4, so a clean sweep of the first 4 places for the team. It's safe to say that, not that there is one for Radical Cup, but if there was a team's championship, Valor Racing would be running away with it, wouldn't they? So impressive stuff. And again, just very calm, very reserved, relatively relaxed. Not too much emotion, but I guess that's him being cool and calm and collected with himself. It's impressive stuff. It's impressive stuff when you get a good amount of victories, but when you hit double digits just past the second half of the halfway point in the season in the championship, that's when you know that you're in incredible form at the moment. And that's a view that not many drivers get to see in their rearview mirror, which is the front of Chris Lulham's car. Usually it's the back of it they get to see very often. And in what are increasingly warm temperatures, the temperature stayed at around 23 degrees. Some more highlights from race 1. So this was Geshev versus Brooks, and he made a dive up the inside into the Virage DuPont. Got the switch back, and through he went. His next task was to try and catch up after Chris Preen. Whilst all that was going on, Chris Lulham was serenely driving away to another Sunday morning victory. Then the fight for third place. Chris Preen did his best to try and keep Christian Brooks at bay for a few laps and defended nicely as Brooks got a little frustrated and lost time. He may have lost him a chance to get second place, but it was here at Debose, up the inside when Preen ran wide and secured the spot. And up into position he went. Marcus Littlewood was being under watchful eye of his DW Racing team, as Adrian Hallmark had a little impromptu on-track race with Chris Lulham on track. But again, there was simply no stopping the championship leader. He now goes into double digits, his 10th win of the season from 11 races, and a winner by 16 seconds. It was victory once again for Chris Lulham in race 2 at Paul Ricard and Hagerty Radical Cup UK. And a victory also for Marcus Littlewood, his second of the season, of the weekend rather, in SR1 class. So, business as usual once again for Chris Lulham. No changes there for him. And I imagine we'll have a podium relatively shortly. Also aware that we have the next single-seater race coming up, which I believe is Spanish F4, which is coming up shortly. And Luke Hilton, I think that's relief rather than not just happiness, but relief. He's managed to score some good points too. So he will certainly be happy with his work to get up to second place. Not quite on the same pace, but of course, being a driver, he'll be taking all the data from Chris Lulham and co, or as much as he's probably the team that Chris will allow him to. Can't imagine he'll give him all his data, but as much data as he can to work with the team and to keep improving his pace. And Luke has been a real natural pace setter and a natural talent ever since I, at least personally, first saw him in the ranks of the Fiesta Junior Championship. Was certainly always up there as a front runner and a class and even a race winner. a grand job, and now he's switched, of course, to the Radical ranks. I imagine he might start to focus on the world of GTs and sports cars and prototypes, and what an addition he would be, along with Chris Lulham, in fact. Imagine those two teaming up in a prototype. That would be something, of course. Imagine if they both teamed up in a Radical and did a two-driver endurance race in a Radical, or something even more powerful like an LMP3 and an LMP2. That would be quite a prospect. Two relatively young British drivers taking the Radical paddock by storm, and now potentially could be looking forwards, if their careers go that path, towards a possible route into the world of higher level sports car racing across the continent and even across the world. So I believe we will have which would be a podium quite shortly. Good stuff. So with the next race coming up very shortly, we say congratulations to Chris Lulham, who picks up, of course, his second win of the day. Congratulations also to Chris Preedy, who wins the Fangio class, and Mark Littlewood, who wins SR1. One more race still to come. That's scheduled at around about 2:25 local time, about 1:25 UK time if you're watching. So from all of us here at Paul Ricard, one more race still to go. Chris Lulham, again victorious at Paul Ricard. Join us later on for race 3. Bye for now.